Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome to Mark and Graham Podcast, episode 11. Follow us on Instagram and follow us on Twitter at Mark and Graham _podcast. It's been a long time coming. We haven't done a show since December. We've been on hiatus. We have school. We have a lot to do. But because of this quarantine and COVID-19 stuff, it's giving us a reason to get back in the studio, and we are very, very happy about it. Mark, how you been?
I've been good. Trying to keep sanity in the house where our lives have really been turned upside down by this coronavirus. My thoughts and prayers are out there with all the families that it's really affecting. We're lucky enough to be doing all right ourselves, but I'm also feeling lucky enough to have the time on my hands right now to get back after the Mark and Graham podcast and hopefully bring you guys some sort of enjoyment during this tough time.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So both of our lives have really been affected. I'm back home, all online classes for the both of us. My internship got suspended this summer, so I hope I get that back. But, the world's kind of at a standstill right now with no sports, Mark.
It is. It's like I've never experienced something like this throughout my life. Sports have always been such a huge part, and obviously some tough circumstances have happened before, such like that really affect the sports world, such as Hurricane Katrina, 9/11, like really tough events. But normally you have sports as an outlet to kind of get you through those times and bring people together. I mean, I think of moments like Mike Piazza's home run after 9/11 or Steve Gleason's punt block at the Superdome after Hurricane Katrina. Like, they rally cities together in times like this. So not having sports as that outlet right now is making it a lot tougher for people. And I feel like sports have always been something that really brings people together. And this is a time where it's sort of not there for us, and it's making it hard.
Yeah, so before we get into events that could be affected by COVID-19, we're going to start really in January, and we're going to give a little recap of what's really gone on and, different topics and sections that me and Mark want to talk about. So we're going to talk about our quarantine clowns. And basically, before quarantine life, we're just going to talk about who had the worst moves and who really hasn't been doing too well in the sports world. So, Mark, if you want to start that off for us.
Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna go with what I think is a pretty obvious choice, and it's been brewing now for uh, over the past year, I would say, but it finally came to fruition just a week or two ago, and that's what went on with Tom Brady and the Patriots. And I think you got to give the clown of the day today to Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots because they really outplayed themselves in this situation, and I think they're going to have a huge wake-up call come time for the regular season. Um, Obviously, it's easy to say that Tom Brady's old, and he's on the other side of the hill. He's only going to go down from here. But at that same time, he knows that offense better than anyone. The offense is built around him, and he was still going to take them to the playoffs and win that division next year. And I just think Bill Belichick thinks that he's the smartest man alive and is going to have a big wake-up call with Jarrett Stidham next year, or don't be surprised if they go after Andy Dalton here in the coming weeks. I think Dalton is definitely a fit there. I don't see Belichick being able to make magic out of a talentless roster without a guy like Tom Brady. And they're just acting like with the snap of their fingers, Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft are suddenly going to make this a playoff team. It's not going to happen. They're going to have to go into rebuild mode, and I think it's really going to be interesting to see the question finally answered of, is it what came first, Belichick or Brady? It's like the chicken or the egg. And I think this year is the first time we're ever actually going to get a look at what that answer might be. And people might be surprised when the Buccaneers go to the playoffs and the Patriots don't. I wouldn't be shocked at all.
So, Mark, before I give mine, I pose you a question after I give my opinion. I think this was more about Brady, saying, "I don't need you, you need me," kind of deal. And I think that Tom is using this opportunity to show that he was really the true talent. He was the real reason behind all the Super Bowls. It wasn't Bill Belichick. And I agree to that to a certain extent, but you look at the situation that he has now in Tampa Bay, it couldn't be any better. Look at the quarterbacks that Bruce Arians has sat in a coordinating room with: Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Carson Palmer, and now Tom Brady. So just another quarterback that Bruce Arians gets to add to his list of great quarterbacks. So I come to my clown. Probably one of the most shocking and one of the most disgusting forms of cheating in MLB history. I'd say it'd probably be the biggest scandal in MLB history, and that goes to the Houston Astros. And Rob Manfred as well. My clowns of the century, really, the Houston Astros. Mark, I'll let you touch base on this a little bit, but basically the Astros were cheating the entire season that they won a World Series. So there you go. That's why you're the clown. But Rob Manfred gets the clown for letting them keep that title and still being, World Series champions. Um, I really don't know how you can get blatantly caught cheating. Your GM gets fired, your manager gets fired, and you're going to keep the title. There's so much proof against them, and they're going to keep the title. I think it'd be the manly thing to do to, vacate the title themselves at this point and, have to earn it themselves. Mark, what's your view on this?
Um, it's terrible. It's terrible for the game of baseball, and I'm a baseball purist. A lot of people might say that, like, honestly, I should be in the baseball age of 50 years ago, because I'm like one of those old school baseball fans that doesn't want rules to be changed, rules to be broken, anything like that. And seeing this I mean, I will forever go down and say that one of the greatest baseball games I ever watched that wasn't the Phillies was that World Series against the Dodgers. Game 5, when all the home runs were hit, the Bellinger home run, the Springer home run, the Correa. Like, that was one of the best games I ever watched, and now, like, it's just always going to have an asterisk next to it for me.
And
I think the biggest problem is, like you said, the way that MLB handled this, because I don't necessarily fault every single player that was involved, because there's a lot of people that, when you're in a situation like that that's so corrupt from the top, how do you speak up against it? Tony Kemp was a guy who refused to participate in it and got sent down to the minor leagues because of it. So there's only so much you can do. I just think completely blame every single player involved isn't necessarily the fairest thing. And anybody who says they all should have been suspended is crazy. You can't do that. You might as well just make them relocate at that point, because they literally wouldn't have needed to field a new team. But I just think that the MLB terribly mishandled it. What needed to be done is the reality is the Astros taking away draft picks doesn't do anything, because their farm system is loaded already. They have a bunch of prospects ready to come up. And the Astros also are incredibly good at signing international talent. Yui Gurriel, international talent. So what they should have done is taken away international signing bonus money, which they didn't. Instead, the MLB actually has a restriction. The most you can fine any team is $5 million for any act, which is absurd. You know how much $5 million is to the Houston Astros?
I mean, that's like a penny.
So that's all they could fine them. Instead, they should have taken away international signing money, which actually matters, because the Astros aren't going to have their draft picks. All they have to do is go overseas and pick up any player they want for however much money. They don't care about cheating overseas. They're just going to sign.
And as a Yankee fan, this cheating scandal affected probably one of the most, decisive pitches in the playoffs. I'm obviously referring to the ALCS Game 6, bottom ninth. Altuve's up, and Chapman's at the plate, or the mound, excuse me. And, of course, he gets the sign. There is no way you hit a 99-mile-per-hour fastball for a walk-off home run off of Aroldis Chapman in the bottom of the ninth to send your team in the World Series unless you know that pitch is coming. He knew that pitch was coming the entire time. I can never have respect for the Houston Astros. I'll never have respect for Rob Manfred. He keeps proving why Bud Selig was such a necessity to this game. And I think he's just an embarrassing commissioner. He didn't handle this situation properly. And overall, it was just an extremely, extremely poor handled situation. Correct?
Yeah, I think now I think it's a complicated situation. It obviously there wasn't a clear answer, but I also, without completely blaming it on Manfred, a lot of the rules that baseball has in place for, like I said, fining teams, the max being $5 million that you can fine any team for any act is insane. You need to have something in the rules for, God forbid, a situation like this, because it's just not fair.
Agreed.
And
Yeah. So, along with a lot of the things that have happened in 2020, probably the biggest headline of the year, and it's going to be the biggest headline of this century, and or even this decade. And I know it's 2020 and we're starting the decade, but this may be one of the top stories of the 2000s, and that being the death of NFL, excuse me, NBA Hall of Famer, NBA ambassador Kobe Bryant. You know, I was sitting in class doing a project when I got the alert saying that Kobe Bryant passed away, and it didn't make sense to me. I was like, oh, what Kobe Bryant? The Kobe Bryant that I grew up watching play basketball, the Kobe Bryant that really morphed the game of basketball into a guard's game. He was one of the first real vicious guards, real vicious shooting guards. He was the shooting guard that could play point guard, and he didn't pass. But Kobe Bryant gave fans some of the most amazing memories, including myself. I'll speak a little bit more about this after I hear from Mark. But Mark, what do you think about this whole situation?
um, it's terrible, terribly tragic. I mean, to have an all-time great and face of the entire sports world pass away is never easy, and always something that deserves to be recognized and truly honored. And I think the entire sports world did a phenomenal job of honoring him, especially the NBA. And I really applaud them for that. But anytime the family is involved the way that they were in this situation and Gianna, it really just is heart aching. Like it really hits home. Kobe Bryant is actually from Lower Merion, which is a couple towns over from me, about a 10-minute drive. He played in my high school gym. He's somebody that's always been close to home here. So it really, it really hurts, and it was something that hurt the sports world. He's just such a dominating figure and a winning personality, and I just think it's something that the sports world's going to have to cope with for a long time. And you see that they're still having a hard time handling it.
Yeah. So obviously, Mark being from Philadelphia, Mark, I- I'm going to share my personal favorite Kobe Bryant moments. That his series back to back with the Celtics. One of my favorite series to watch. Kobe's lob to Shaq. That's always a good one. Kobe just knew how to play basketball, and he played his heart out until the day he retired. Scoring 60 against the Jazz in his final game, and that just goes to show his character, and he loved his daughters. He was a dad to four girls. He was a role model in the sports community. Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll share a story that I heard during, if any of you guys watched the Kobe Bryant funeral and memorial. Rob Pelinka, the Lakers owner, told a story um, about he actually was one of the last people to ever speak to Kobe Bryant when he was on the helicopter. And Kobe had reached out to him via text and was texting him about, I don't know if you've heard of the father that was also in the helicopter crash, who was a baseball coach, and him and his daughter were on the helicopter because she was on Gianna's team. And Rob Pelinka told this story that he was texting Kobe Bryant minutes before the accident while he was on the plane because Kobe had reached out and said, "Hey Rob," they were really good friends. Um, One of the girls on Gianna's basketball team's father is asking me just if I had any connections with Major League Baseball agents because his oldest daughter is looking to get into the industry with an internship. So Kobe had reached out to Rob Pelinka to ask if he had any connections, and Rob was saying had just texting him back, giving him a couple names, and saying he'd be happy to talk to him and help out the man's daughter. And then just a little bit of time later is when the helicopter crashed. But Rob Pelinka's whole point was saying that the last deed Kobe ever did on this earth was a good deed. He was trying to help a young person get into the field that they wanted to through his outlet in the sports world. And I think whatever you think of Kobe Bryant, basketball wise, like there's just something to be said about his work ethic and personality in that sense.
Agreed. Yeah, Kobe Bryant definitely, like I said, he was an ambassador of the game, and you could be a great player, but you can't be an ambassador. And being an ambassador is just being loved by the fans. And Kobe Bryant was an ambassador to the game. He spoke Spanish. He spoke French. He really wanted to diversify the game, and we're starting to see more interracial playing, or not interracial playing, more intercultural playing. Excuse me. Um, and I think Kobe Bryant had a lot to do with that. Guys like Kobe, guys like LeBron, guys like Kevin Durant, Dirk Nowitzki, Yao Ming. It's those guys, the ambassadors of the game, and Kobe Bryant was definitely one of them. So before we get into the chunk of the show, we have a few lists for you guys that are the chunk of the show. We're going to start out with the first one. A lot of things are being screwed up by COVID-19, but something that really hasn't seemed affected to the fans' eye is NFL free agency. So Mark and I have listed 5 teams who we think are the winners of NFL free agency, 2 of the biggest losers, and our biggest question mark that Mark will answer, no pun intended. So Mark, I'll start off with probably the biggest bonehead move, but also one of the best trades. The Cardinals trading away basically David Johnson and a dumpster fire for arguably the best NFL wide receiver in DeAndre Hopkins. Mark, let's talk about that and what we're expecting out of this 2020 Cardinals offense.
Yeah, they're gonna be a problem. Kyler Murray with DeAndre Hopkins and Larry Fitzgerald is a scary sight. I'm a huge, if you remember back to the summer, I'm a huge Kyler Murray guy. I really think he's talented and was impressed by his rookie season. He just needs some weapons around him, and David Johnson is washed up. It was time to move on. The fact that they somehow pulled DeAndre Hopkins out of David Johnson is mind-boggling to me. I know as an Eagles fan, the Eagles were in on the Hopkins sweepstakes, and they were saying that like Miles Sanders would have had to be included and draft picks. So I personally would have probably done it. The fact that Miles Sanders is 100 times more potential and more trade value than David Johnson at this point in their careers. So the fact that somehow they got that trade done with David Johnson is crazy to me. But the bigger question is, what were the Texans thinking? And I don't. It Bill O'Brien. Obviously Bill O'Brien is, for whatever reason, the GM and head coach of that team, and it's obvious that he doesn't know what he's doing and needs to be fired immediately. But he's the GM, so the GM can't fire him, so the owner will have to. It's just I don't. It's a mess in Houston right there. I feel terrible for Deshaun Watson.
And you'd think after having such a strong playoff performance that they want to keep this team together. But like you said, this screams relationship between head coach and player. And DeAndre Hopkins did make some comments about how Bill O'Brien had said, almost compared him to Aaron Hernandez when he met with him. He said the last time I had a meeting with a player like this, it was Aaron Hernandez sitting across from me. Extremely inappropriate thing of him to say. DeAndre Hopkins, he's one of those guys that he doesn't really talk much. He lets his game do the talking. And, to see him working with Larry Fitzgerald now, two guys who don't drop the ball, it's going to be amazing to watch. Kenyon Drake out of the backfield, Kyler Murray. This offense is going to scream play action because truthfully they can run the ball and throw it deep. They also have Christian Kirk. And all they have to figure out is the defense. But the Cardinals, from where they were 2 years ago with Josh Rosen, I think they're in a great place right now. And also, fun fact, Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins have the most touchdowns together in the past 3 seasons at 26 touchdowns combined together. Like, Watkins or Watson to Hopkins, 26 touchdowns, NFL record in the past 3 seasons. Again, so number 2, the Buffalo Bills. Mark, let's hear it. Why do you think the Buffalo Bills are big winners?
I think Stephon Diggs just was a great move. I really, he's a talented receiver. I think he was worth, once again, I wish the Eagles had gone after him. I just think you can't really, the Bills are a team that's very much ready to contend, in my opinion. And if they didn't already last season, losing to the Texans, Josh Allen, I think, is one of the most talented young quarterbacks in the league, and you had to go out and get him a weapon. Stephon Diggs is that. And if Diggs was not a fan of Kirk Cousins at all, if he didn't like Kirk Cousins, he is going to love Josh Allen because everything that Kirk Cousins isn't, Josh Allen is. And you watch the Bills. I think they're going to go out this season and take the East for the first time in a while. And Stephon Diggs is going to be a big part of that. I think that move alone puts them at the top of the free agency list.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think Josh Allen is young. He's great. I think he was, coming out of Wyoming, he was a very, very quiet name until his senior season with unbelievable arm strength. He's able to run the ball. The Bills lost Shaq Lawson. Not a big deal. I think the Bills are set. And don't call me crazy, but I think there is a very large opportunity to see the Patriots come in third in the AFC East. Call me crazy, but the Dolphins look good. This Dolphins team looks good. And, again, the Jets probably going to come in fourth. But I think this Bills team definitely has the opportunity to win the AFC East. Again, another AFC East team, the Dolphins. I'll start. They signed. They started free agency with a bang. They signed probably the best cornerback on the market in Byron Jones. They signed a pass rusher in Shaq Lawson, and they signed the best defensive player on that Patriots defense, not named Stephon Gilmore. They signed Kyle Van Noy. They got a linebacker, Brian Flores, an ex-coach from the Patriots. He knows those players. He's a defensive-minded coach. And, I don't know if you saw, but this Dolphins team that started out very poor, they finished 5-4. They play hard, and I think the Dolphins are going to do great this season. Mark?
Yeah, I think it all come down to, and we're about to get into it in a little bit, but what do they do in the draft to address the quarterback position? But no matter what situation they're in, Ryan Fitzpatrick's the type of guy that's going to be able to carry you through that transition, and I think they like that. Now, I like the defensive acquisitions they made. They're really building upon depth in a unit that's already pretty good with Xavier Howard. I do think Byron Jones was overvalued in this market because he was, like you said, the best corner, but he got paid more money than he's worth. And as an Eagles fan, where we needed to address corner in this offseason, I like what we did a lot better in a lot of people were mad that we didn't sign Byron Jones when the Eagles were quiet the first couple of days of free agency. They knew they were going after Slay. And in my opinion, I would much rather have Darius Slay for the money we have him at than Byron Jones. But for the Dolphins are in like a can't lose situation, you know? They
Mm-hmm.
they needed to spend, and I think they made the right choices to really start building a unit. And Brian Flores is going to be a good coach in the NFL. You mark my words on that.
Mark telling you to mark his words.
Mark it
Brian
down.
Flores, I agree. Brian Flores is a great coach, and these guys that leave New England, they're a real hit or miss. Matt Patricia being a big example. Matt Patricia's only won 9 games as the head coach of the Detroit Lions. You saw Josh McDaniels. When he's not with Belichick, it blows up in his face. And we see this every time McDaniels' contract is up. Who's going to get McDaniels as head coach? Who's going to get McDaniels as head coach? Oh, we thought the Colts got him. No, Robert Kraft wanted him back. So it's always interesting to see the Patriots Belichick head coaching tree. So number 4, pretty obvious one. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They just got Tom Brady. Mark, how do you see this fit in Tampa Bay?
Oh, it's beautiful. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are ready to win. They are one of the most talented teams offensively in football. And if it wasn't for Jameis Winston like having a part of his brain that just must be missing and just automatically causes him to say A is who I should be throwing to, but every time I see A, I'm going to just throw to B instead and get picked off for a pick six every single play. If it wasn't for that, they'd already be a playoff team. Mike Evans, stud. Chris Godwin, stud. OJ Howard, stud. I mean, they are loaded offensively, and if they somehow land Julian Edelman, like there's rumors going around they're going to, you're looking at, dare I say, Super Bowl contender. They need to work.
Dare you say they are going to be Super Bowl contenders, my friend? And I'll let you finish, but I've been thinking about this for a long time, my friend.
No, I mean, they're going to be really good. The problem is their window is small, very small, because the reality you can't deny Brady is only a couple of years away. He wasn't Tom Brady last year, but the Tom Brady of last year is still better than Jameis Winston. And
Agreed.
I will give a hot take in saying Tom Brady was a good choice by them, but there were actually a lot of quarterbacks this offseason that could have filled that hole in Tampa Bay and made them a playoff team. There's a lot of quarterbacks that could have done it. That's how bad Jameis Winston is and how good that team around Tom Brady is.
Agreed. Here, okay. I'm gonna give you 3 reasons why this is the most perfect fit. All right. And it goes all the way back to New England. Tom Brady was drafted 199th. The man who told Robert Kraft to draft Tom Brady is now the GM of the Buccaneers. That's 1. 2. Bruce Arians. Again, I mentioned this earlier in the show. Bruce Arians coached Ben Roethlisberger when he was the coordinator of the Steelers. Bruce Arians coached Carson Palmer when Palmer was doing really well in the Cardinals. Bruce Arians coached Peyton Manning under Tony Dungy. Bruce Arians is now adding Tom Brady to that resume. That is a very good quarterback resume. Bruce Arians is a very, very quarterback-centered coach. He's great to work with. Number 3, you have 2 1,000-yard-plus receivers lining up, one on each side of you. 2 receivers that had over 1,000 yards when they were playing for a quarterback with 30 interceptions. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and OJ Howard are going to need to anchor this offense. They are basically, there's going to be more pressure on their backs than ever because they have a man who no one is going to say is playing bad. If you do not have success with Tom Brady as your quarterback, they're going to look at you and say this is your fault. Tampa Bay is going to be going through what I like to call the Tom Brady effect. The Tom Brady effect is basically Tom Brady's going to get there and everyone is going to want to play in Tampa Bay. One being Jason Pierre-Paul. They just re-signed him. Ndamukong Suh just took a one-year deal. You're going to start seeing players taking these little one-year deals, two-year deals, because they want to play with Tom Brady. Meaning the Buccaneers are set up for short-term success. If they do not succeed in 2 years, this is going to be looked at as a failed operation. Do I think it's going to be a failed operation? Absolutely not. Tom Brady loves playing with tight ends. He's got OJ Howard, who needs to revamp his career. And he's got beasts. The last time Tom Brady had two 1,000-yard receivers, they were almost the best football team in NFL history. And I'm referring to 2007. He had Wes Welker on one side and Randy Moss on the other. They were 17-0, and they lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl. Forever will be one of the greatest games to ever be played in Super Bowl history. So that is why I think this Tom Brady fit is perfect. Let's continue on. Mark, you really wanted to talk about this, and I'm curious as to why. Why are the Titans on our list?
The Titans absolutely perfected free agency, in my opinion, and a lot of people might be confused or think, like, a lot of people thought the Titans were going to be in on the Tom Brady sweepstakes. And I'll tell you why they made the right choice this offseason, and they're going to be a Super Bowl contender this season. What they were left with a situation where they had to choose. What do you do between Derrick Henry, who they were very close to losing, and Ryan Tannehill? Who do you pay? Who do you franchise tag? And who's your quarterback going into the season? And I got news for you. Ryan Tannehill, from the time he took over in Tennessee as the starter last season, had the highest QBR of anybody in the league. And I am a huge advocate for Ryan Tannehill.
Now,
in my opinion, a top 15 quarterback in the NFL, absolutely.
okay.
And I just at some point when you have a quarterback like that that's doing the job and getting you to the AFC championship, you have to pay him. And you can't go another route, especially when he's young. Now, at the same time, people are saying, why did you pay him the money you did? Is he worth that money? Well, I'll tell you why he is. Because, first of all, as Todd Gurley has showed, you'd never, ever, ever pay a running back that type of money. You never pay them a contract like that. So as great as Derrick Henry just was, do you pay him that money? No. Instead, the 2-year contract with Tannehill allowed them to lock up their quarterback for 2 years for decent money, a young quarterback, and use that franchise tag on Derrick Henry so you didn't lose him. And that was the key to their offseason. The fact that they were able to franchise tag Derrick Henry and not waste that money and a huge contract on a running back that already has some injury history and lock up your young quarterback, I think they perfected this offseason, and they could easily be back in the AFC Championship next year.
Now, here's my issue with paying Tannehill all this money. Look at when they beat the Patriots in the playoffs. And I know this is a playoff game. I know it's against the Patriots. But Mark, do you know how many passing yards Ryan Tannehill had against the Patriots?
What was it, like 60?
68 yards. He had 68 passing yards in a playoff game versus the Patriots. You know how many rushing yards Derrick Henry had?
200.
About 140. That's my issue with this team. You can only rely on a running back for so long before the play action gets old and they know you're not going to run it or they know you're not going to pass it. What Henry did, man, how are you going to, like, I hate to say it, but, this this Tannehill contract thing has now made me start thinking about what does Dak Prescott deserve? You know, which is another conversation that if you want to have, we can have real quick. But does Dak Prescott deserve to come out of this as the highest paid QB in NFL history?
God no.
Why?
Because when the moment gets bright, Dak Prescott folds, and I don't think that's something that will never change. I just think Dak Prescott, you talk about having talent around you. There's no excuse for the fact that Dak Prescott has never, ever, ever been big in big moments.
But you could argue that it was Jason Garrett's crappy play calling.
And we will find out, but I mean, when you watch Dak Prescott games, it's usually he plays really well in meaningless games, and when he gets in those clutch moments late in the game, he's terrible. I don't know. He's not awful. I think he's done enough to earn the "you are our quarterback" for the next 10 years, but when you're talking all-time money, no. He's probably worth the same. In my opinion, I have him in the same class as Ryan Tannehill. I think those are your 10 through 15 quarterbacks. In that range, I probably have Prescott, Tannehill, Stafford, and Matt Ryan are in that range at this point in their careers. And maybe like a Kirk Cousins is around there, maybe a little outside of it.
So before we move on to our biggest losers, the Cowboys were a close third, but the Cowboys let Byron Jones walk. They lost Travis Frederick, and you look at the grand scheme of things, and I'm pinpointing this on Jerry Jones, and I'm not even pinpointing it on Jerry Jones this offseason. This dispute we're having with Dak and the Cowboys, this goes all the way back to last offseason, when Garrett gave the whole "is it my quarterback or is it my coach" dispute 1 year too long. Look at the Cowboys the year after they drafted Zeke. They had the most beautiful roster in football. They had an offensive line that could have protected Terry Bradshaw right now. But this was Jerry Jones, like this whole Jerry Jones, Jason Garrett tap dance had the worst domino effect for the Cowboys, because now instead of paying Dak last season, you paid Zeke. You were too busy focusing on Garrett, and now you're in a situation where you barely had a coach search. I'm sure you didn't interview anyone but Mike McCarthy for the job. I'm sure you thought that you could just get Mike McCarthy and all your problems will go away. So we're really going to see how this is going to fold out. But I do think Dak deserves $30 million, because if you're going to give Kirk Cousins $60 million guaranteed on a 3-year deal, why doesn't Dak deserve $40 million? And Kirk Cousins, if it wasn't for one throw he made to Adam Thielen, what makes Kirk Cousins better than Dak Prescott? That's the question I pose, and that's where I'm going to leave this off. So our biggest losers of free agency, Mark, you want to start with our first one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Houston Texans.
That's a given.
It's not even the fact. Listen, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that DeAndre Hopkins is by any means Larry Fitzgerald personality-wise. He's got major personality flaws that I couldn't even imagine having in the locker room.
Oh.
But DeAndre Hopkins, without a doubt,
debatable.
Have you? Did you watch Hard Knocks when the Texans Hard Knocks? He's
savage.
He might be funny, but he definitely has some personality issues there. But at the same time, there's no excuse for. I don't care what your personality is. When you have talent like that, you gotta get something back in a trade. And I think Bill O'Brien's ego got the best of him, no doubt, in that situation. And
in the Texans' defense, my bad. Continue.
the problem too is like the Texans are in win now mode. They were really good last year. I have had them as a Super Bowl contender for a couple of years now. How do you set your team back that far? Because you literally just went back probably 2 years at least. They have no weapons now. Oh, how about your number one receiver is Will Fuller, who breaks his leg every time he gets up out of bed? It's just insane. They have nothing else there. David Johnson and Will Fuller is you might as well have a retirement home as your offense. It's insane.
You know, looking at the Texans, and you mentioned a trade. Now, I don't know if you did know, but DeAndre Hopkins only had a year left. So in the NFL, when you have players with 1 year left on their deal, and you don't trade them, it's almost like the Anthony Davis saga. They wanted to trade him, but he had 1 season left. Oh, just like the Kawhi. You could look at the Kawhi situation. You know, Masai Ujiri took a risk. He traded away players and got Kawhi Leonard, knowing that Kawhi Leonard wasn't going to come back. He said, "You have 1 year. Let's make this 1 year good." And Kawhi Leonard, went and he won a championship for Toronto and he didn't sign back. But, that was a rare situation. That never happens. You look at DeAndre's situation, he had 1 year left. And like you said, DeAndre Hopkins is a personality that not every locker room, can hold. And you look at, that 1 year left and teams just weren't that interested, because why, this decision made a lot of teams think, is it worth the 1 year if he's going to cause issues? Are we going to win? Are we going to win a Super Bowl? And that's why you saw when he got traded to the Texans, they didn't mention it, but DeAndre Hopkins planned to work out a deal with the Cardinals. So I'm sure the Texans understood how bad of a trade this was, but they knew this was the only opportunity they can get to get something out of DeAndre Hopkins. And I don't think people realize that. So, I mean, forgive me for backing up the Texans a little bit, but I think this was more of like a, what do they say? Damage control. Do we keep Hopkins for another year? Know he's not going to come back, have problems ensue in the locker room, or do we trade him away, get something in return so we don't just set him into free agency and he can go elsewhere? That's my view. I still think the Texans effed up, but do you understand the point I'm trying to make?
No, absolutely. I think there's something to be said there. He's a rental. And
he's a rent. Exactly. He's a rental.
You have to have that contract lined up as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Sixers did it last year with Jimmy Butler. It's an all-in move or nothing. And it definitely takes away from trade value, but it doesn't excuse them not doing anything this offseason either. They need to somehow salvage a team. They're ready to contend. How many more years of J.J. Watt do you have? I mean,
You don't know. J.J. Watt isn't going to last forever, and I think that we're starting to come to terms with that.
And I think we're also starting to come to terms with Bill O'Brien having an ego problem, because don't forget the same thing happened with Jadeveon Clowney as well. And the last thing I'll say before we move on to our other loser is you talked about the Bill Belichick coaching tree before, and people have this conspiracy theory for a long time now that the disciples of Bill Belichick go other places, ruin their entire franchise, all AFC teams, and then return right back to Belichick with a brand new slate. So maybe Bill O'Brien's just out there ruining the Texans so that the Patriots can bounce back. But
I've definitely seen the positives of Bill O'Brien, though. Deshaun Watson posted a tweet with Drake lyrics in it. I didn't really read the tweet exactly. I don't remember it, but it had to do with losing ties with someone, thinking one thing and something else happens. And, I really think in this time of quarantine, you really could, and it sucks, but a lot of time you look and, this trade being one of them, this is a business, and unless your name is, unless your last name is Rogers, unless your last name is Brady, unless your last name is Breeze, you're not going to get what you want in the NFL, and that's just what it is. So let's talk about the next biggest loser, the Saint. Not actually. Wow, I'm going crazy. The Los Angeles Rams. Mark, I'm going to let you talk, but I'm going to go first. The Rams. I'm telling you, that Super Bowl was a curse because they've just been going. Ooh, Gurley's gone, Fowler's gone, Clay Matthews is gone, Corey Littleton's gone. They're just losing a lot of weapons left and right.
Yeah. Listen, the Rams suck. I'm just gonna be straight up. I mean, Jared Goff is a bottom 10 quarterback in the NFL. I'll come out and say that. Todd Gurley, the best running back in the NFL 2 years ago, it just got cut. Clay Matthews cut. Talk about something in the NFL that almost never, ever, really in any sport, never works is, hey, let me get all of the biggest personalities that I can find in the league and put them on one team because they don't mesh. And I just think the Rams bought too much into that. You need a team that pieces well together to come together and win a Super Bowl. I mean, that's not always the most talented team that wins the Super Bowl.
It's never the most talented team that wins the Super Bowl.
No.
And I will add on to that. The New York Giants in 2007 and 2011, the Philadelphia Eagles, there are so many teams that, and normally it's the ones that make the best Super Bowls. It's not about who's the best team. It's about who's the hottest team. Look at the playoffs. Look at what the Titans did. The Titans didn't win the Super Bowl, but I'm sure as hell they were happy that they didn't have off like the Ravens did. They had that huge win, probably the biggest win in Mike Vrabel. That's going to be the biggest win in Mike Vrabel's career, besides if he wins a Super Bowl. He beat his old coach in the playoffs versus his old teammates. He called it the gates of hell. When you go to Foxborough in the playoffs, you are going into the gates of hell. And yeah, just again, it's not about the best team. It's about the hottest team. If you go in with a lot of momentum, you're going to keep playing like that. That's why having the number one seed on the bye and going 14-3 in the regular season isn't always the best thing in the world. You need to lose a few times. You need to feel what it's like to lose a game.
Absolutely. And before we the last team, I think the window has closed. I really do. And it's a tough situation to be in, a really tough situation to be in when you have a guy like Jared Goff. And it's that situation where you have a quarterback, and I'll give you a couple comparisons to Jared Goff. You have a quarterback that's just good enough to not be replaced, but will never be a top half of the league quarterback. So you're sitting at a guy who is 25 to 15 in the landscape of NFL quarterbacks for his entire career. And you know who that reminds me of? How about Andy Dalton? Andy Dalton, just like that. That's a guy who his entire career is a bottom half of the league quarterback, but he's never bad enough that he could be replaced. And the Bengals have just been in purgatory for a decade now. And, the
Marvin Lewis curse lives on.
Goff had his chance, but I really think that team's head down a bad path. And you know what? That's going to be the Niners and 49ers division for a while.
Going back to my quarterback conversation, Jared Goff is another one of those guys that make Dak Prescott look at Jerry Jones and says, these guys were drafted in the first round, numbers 1 and 2. Look at Carson Wentz. Look at Jared Goff. Those boys got paid. Dak Prescott was a 4th-round pick. He's looking at Jerry Jones and saying, these guys got paid, and I have more wins than both of them over the past 4 seasons combined. The only guy he's behind in wins over the past 4 seasons is a guy named Tom Brady. So just another example of a quarterback getting overpaid because of 2 good seasons. And I think, yeah, what the Cowboys are doing was good. I think for a rookie quarterback, you need to string out that rookie contract as long as you can. If I'm the organization. Okay. So biggest question mark?
Yeah, well, this is just a team that we see a little bit differently on, so we're gonna just debate it out for a little bit. But how about the Panthers? What's your state of the Panthers? How do you feel about their offseason?
I they got a guy who is proven that he'll change a program, and he has a good resume. He's changed a lot of teams. Taking Baylor from 1-10 to 11-1, taking Temple from 2-9 to being in a bowl game. But the Panthers are taking a different approach that I've never seen. A lot of these teams want success right away. The Panthers pretty much said, "Hey, we know we're not going to be good next year. We know we're not going to be good the next year. We're on land. We're going to take Matt Rule and we're going to put him on an 8-year plan." So I was very, very intrigued by his 8-year deal, not having any NFL experience. Because you look at guys that try to go from college to the NFL and like all the way down to Nick Saban. The transition is really, really hard, and they think Matt Rule could do it. And Teddy Bridgewater, a guy that I really respect. I think he deserved that deal, but at the same time, like, you have a guy named Cam Newton, Heisman winner, Super Bowl runner-up, won an MVP, and you're gonna, wait until the quarterback market dries up to release him. Stephen A. said it the best. The Panthers screwed Cam Newton. Okay, they knew they weren't keeping Cam Newton. They couldn't have cut him 4 weeks ago when a lot of teams were looking for a quarterback. I now think that Cam's going to struggle to find a job. And I'm going to let you talk on this, Mark, but the Panthers really screwed Cam Newton
over. No, I agree with that. I think there was definitely turmoil in that organization, and a lot of that has to do with Ron Rivera had to go. I really like the Matt Rule hire, and with Temple connections, you talk about from the XFL
PJ Walker.
I like that move. I think that's going to be an interesting storyline. Pair him with Teddy Bridgewater and
some sort of Taysom Hill deal going.
Yeah, it's going to be. I really like what they have going on, and McCaffrey fits in perfectly there. It's just I think McCaffrey needed that. And McCaffrey's the type of guy where if you get the right quarterback with him, you go from pretender to in a very period of time. I think that the Panthers in a situation like that. Now the issue is Luke Kuechly retiring. That's really gonna set them back. The defense has gotta have some new guys step up to the plate. But the last thing I want to say is on Cam Newton. He's a guy that he was never gonna win anything with them, and I think they were wasting their time any more time spent with him. But it still does not excuse the fact that I agree, he's not gonna get a job. All of his opportunities are pretty much gone at this point. It's probably almost have to wait until the draft to see where he exactly fits. A lot of people said the Bears. The Bears should go with Nick Foles as their offensive president.
The Bears need to start Nick Foles. Mitch Trubisky cannot throw a football. I think, and I hate what's happening to Nick Foles. I hate how he has this journeyman role, but like at the same, I'm very, very confused because what he did with that playoff team with what he did with the Eagles was unreal. But we've seen him do it with the Eagles before. Like, he steps up when he has to step up. Do you think he can make it with Matt Nagy as his head coach? Do you think by week 8 he will be the starting quarterback of the Chicago Bears?
I think they're going to go back and forth all season, I think, between the two of them. It's going to be a mess. But it was more of a locker room, in my opinion. I think, and that is why Cam Newton doesn't have a job and Nick Foles does. Because, Cam Newton's got personality issues. People don't like playing with him. And when a lot of people had the Bears as a team pegged for Cam Newton last season, but if you are kind of trying to still get as much out of Trubisky as you can because he was a top pick, then you got to go with a guy like Foles, who everyone loves him in a locker room. Everybody loves him. And he will take on that leadership role. You have Cam Newton in there, there's no leadership role guiding Mitch Trubisky. No way. He's going to be in there questioning why he's not the starter every single week.
Agreed. Now, as we got sidetracked, we have 2 more segments for you guys today. Before we start, I just want to say lastly, Nick Foles, I really wish Jacksonville gave him a shot. The fact that he broke his collarbone week 1 on a 77-yard touchdown, bomb, is crazy. But okay. So now me and Mark made a list of who we think are going to go top 5 in the draft. It's pretty even for numbers 1 and 2. So let's go ahead and just say this. We both think Joe Burrow is going to go number 1. Pride of Louisiana right now. And number 2, the Redskins are going to take Chase Young. The guy is a century edge rusher, and he's unbelievable. So, Mark, if you want to talk about what we think is going to happen at number 3 with the Lions.
Yeah, so I have something a little bit different at 3. I think the Lions are in an interesting spot. They have an interesting leverage point. A lot of people question whether they'll think about a quarterback to replace Stafford at some point, but I still believe Stafford's got a little bit left. He's not terrible enough to move on already. He has talent, and I think the Lions are in a spot where they should really look to trade down. People have proven it in the past, and honestly, the Raiders are a team that's kind of showing it right now, and the Rams took on the role of doing the opposite, which is rather than going all in, take a step back when you have a top pick like that, trade down and rebuild your roster. And I think the Lions could really do that if they trade this pick. And the team I have moving up to the 3 spot is the Chargers. I think the Chargers leap the Dolphins, go to the 3 spot, and they take Tua. That's what I really believe. Tua's gonna go to the Chargers at 3. And then at number 4, I think that would be interesting for the Giants. The Giants would then be able to get Okudah from Ohio State, the defensive back. Jeff Okudah would be a really good pick at number 4. And then that leaves you at number 5. The Dolphins would then get Justin Herbert. Let's hear what you have, Brian.
Okay, so, I've been thinking about this. Why the hell would the Lions get rid of Matthew Stafford at this point? If they wanted to get rid of him, I feel like they would have already made it aware. I think the Lions need Jeff Okudah after getting rid of Darius Slay, and I think it's a perfect fit. Get rid of your corner, draft a real good corner. So I don't logically see why the Lions would get Tua, especially when next year you have a draft loaded with quarterbacks, especially Trevor Lawrence. The next year, that number 1 pick is going to be the craziest pick ever. People want Trevor Lawrence.
You think over Joe Burrow though?
Well, yeah, 110%.
Really?
110%. Took Joe Burrow 3 years to find the right school. Trevor Lawrence is a freshman. Trevor Lawrence was a freshman 2 years ago and had the most flawless season I've ever seen. Yeah, he took a step back his sophomore year, but he'll learn.
He looked
Trevor
huge
Lawrence,
in that national championship.
6'5". He's just a quarterback. You look at him and you think quarterback. He is a pro style quarterback. I can't believe I have to explain this to you. The Lions are going to get Jeff Okudah. At number 4, I think the Giants, they can't really mess up this pick. If we take Tristan Wirfs from Iowa, had a great combine, but I really think 4 is a bit high for him. We could take that guy from Georgia, but really, I think a safe pick would be Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson. He's taken snaps from safety. He's taken snaps from middle linebacker. He's taken snaps from edge, and we need that. We need a guy we can move around the field because the Giants don't have that much talent on defense right now, and that's what's holding us back. And if we take offense, great. We need to replace Nate Solder. The guy sucks. He was Tom Brady's greatest protection for years. Comes to the Giants, dumpster fire. So I think that the Giants take Isaiah Simmons or an offensive lineman. And I think the Dolphins take Tua. I really don't see any trades being made. I could possibly see someone, trading with the Dolphins and the Dolphins moving up to 3. And Lions moving back to 5. I could see that. But I definitely don't see that. I don't see the Lions giving up Matt Stafford this early. It doesn't make sense to me.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to move on to our last segment, Odd Man Out. Mark, you want to explain what we're doing?
Yeah. So, and actually, we're going to have an interesting twist with our Odd Man Out segment that I'm excited for, which is this with what's been going on with the coronavirus. Obviously, one of the greatest sports times of the year, if not actually, I would say without a doubt the greatest, is usually March. You have March Madness. You have opening day, which was yesterday, completely canceled. It was a really, really tough day with no baseball. You got NBA playoffs coming around, NHL playoffs, and it's all kind of been put on hold. And especially the NCAA tournament, which is just canceled. And it's really, it's still hard to believe that it's just canceled. Like, I keep waiting for the bracket to just come out.
It's so weird. It's like a gross feeling. Like we look like March Madness is just, it's just amazing. It's just another. You're never gonna find basketball like March Madness ever.
So for this week's Odd Man Out, we're gonna do the closest thing we can to giving you guys some sort of college basketball with our top 5 and then an odd man out of the greatest college basketball players of our generation. And then be on the lookout on our social media pages. We're going to be running our own Mark and Graham bracket for March Madness 2020. We're going to be putting up some polls so you guys can vote on who wins each matchup. And hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to determine a winner. The way the bracket's going to work for that is going to be every single sport, best player of our generation, 1 through 16. So just be on the lookout for that on social media. But for now, let's get into college basketball players, our top 5. You want to start off, Graham?
Yes, sir. So at number 5, Gordon Hayward and Butler going and almost beating Duke. I cannot explain that this was one inch away from becoming the greatest Cinderella story of all time. Brad Stevens, who is now the coach of the Celtics, coached a Cinderella Butler team with young Gordon Hayward on there. You literally look at Gordon Hayward on this team, and he looks like a sophomore in high school. But he was magnificent. This Butler team took Duke down to the wire. This game literally went down to a half-court shot that bounced off the front of the rim. One of the craziest games of all time. Mark, you've definitely seen highlights from the game. So that is number 4, Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis was a player that we still have not seen a player as dominant as Anthony Davis as a freshman. Anthony Davis perfectly transformed into he was an NBA player in college. That's how I look at that. So yeah, it's really self-explanatory. I have Anthony Davis at number 4. Mark, let me hear your 5 and 4.
Number five, I have the man from Wisconsin who really made a national championship run. He was there for 4 years and just dominated the sport of basketball and had a he was a his physical traits you would never really expect to be an all-time great college basketball player, but that's Wisconsin's Frank Kaminsky. I think Frank Kaminsky for our generation of basketball was one of the greats. And it was year in and year out. I loved watching those teams. Him and Sam Decker were phenomenal. He could shoot, he could rebound. He was just a force down low.
Great
And
national title game. Great national title game.
excellent, excellent. And you know what? He reminds me of a lot of a player I'm going to talk about later who was my number two, a more polished, better college version. But Frank Kaminsky, absolutely one of the best college basketball players I ever watched. And number four for me is another guy. I'll never forget his name. He sort of just made his own shot. I mean, honestly, growing up, it was always when you shoot a paper basketball into the trash can, you would yell Kobe, but you would also yell Jimmer whenever you shot a deep three. And Jimmer Fredette was one of the best college basketball players I got to watch. He would pull up from Steph Curry range before that was even a thing in the NBA. And what a great story with BYU. It was so fun to watch. I love when a guy like him turns a small name, small school into a tournament favorite. And Jimmer Fredette was just incredible to watch.
Understood. So at my 2 and 3, number 3, I have Dwayne Wade taking Marquette all the way to the Final Four. Dwayne Wade put on one of the most magnificent college runs I have ever read about, ever witnessed. Dwayne Wade dropped 40 against Kentucky in the Elite Eight, one of the best college basketball performances of all time. Statistically, it's ranked in the top 3. Dwayne Wade was just another species of human, and I think it was in college where the nickname Flash really came along, and I think Dwayne Wade molded himself into the perfect basketball player in that tournament. And I think that when you look at small school, big player, big result, you think of Dwayne Wade's Marquette team. You also think about my number 2, Steph Curry taking a not really known Davidson squad to the Elite Eight. Steph Curry, one of the smallest players in college basketball, having such a huge impact on the game. You explained it perfectly, Mark. I really you didn't explain it, actually. You're talking about Jimmy Fredette. I'm an idiot. Like you said, when people shoot, they say Curry. Steph Curry is the best 3-point shooter of all time. He started that journey in college, and I think it was amazing to watch. Mark, who do you have at 2 and 3?
Number 3, I have Kemba Walker. Kemba was outstanding to watch for the UConn Huskies. What an incredible tournament run. Everyone remembers the Big East buzzer beater, cardiac Kemba. That was phenomenal. Him and his relationship was just so cool to watch. And he reminds me of one of those players who like solidified their draft stock from the tournament, which is always cool to watch. And then I love how went on to become such a good NBA player. He just is a good guy, like fun to watch, clutch factor, and a guy who almost makes this list in a way too that you can't forget about from those teams is Shabazz Napier. Excuse me, because he did the same thing the next year without Kemba. So Shabazz Napier had a phenomenal college career. You can't forget him, but Kemba was definitely the leader of that team. And then number 2, I'm going Doug McDermott. Doug McDermott was the greatest, one of the greatest scorers in college basketball history. He scored like nobody else, lights out. And, he's one of those guys that had no business being a top draft pick. But when you put up numbers like that in college, people are forced to look your direction. Like, you have no other choice but to look at a guy like Doug McDermott when he put up those numbers with his dad as the head coach. It was such a cool story to watch at Creighton. I was sad when they got bounced from the tournament. I remember that being such an emotional goodbye. He was a 4-year starter at Creighton, their all-time leading scorer. and just one of the greatest shooters I've ever watched, a pure shooter. He hasn't really turned it on yet at an NBA level, but college basketball-wise, there were few players ever better than him at shooting.
All right. Number one, you already spoke about him, Cardiac Kemba. In all my years of living, I've seen teams make incredible runs, but none of them have ever won the title. And Kemba Walker could say that he won the title. Kemba Walker took an 11-seeded UConn. They were the number 9 seed in the Big East tournament. So think about the start of the Big East tournament all the way to the end of March Madness. That's about beginning of February, mid-February, all to the end of March. A number 9 in your conference, the number 9 team in your conference, not even the number 9 seed in the tournament, number 9 in the conference. They win the Big East tournament, which was the only way they can get a bid. They weren't going to get a bid otherwise. Jim Calhoun takes that team, Cardiac Kemba, a junior, with Hashim Thabit, Shabazz Napier, Jeremy Lamb, when they were young, and they took them to a title. They won a title. And that's just something that you can't recreate. And for that, because of the title, you have to give Kemba the number 1. And my odd man out, you already spoke about him, Frank Kaminsky. Frank Kaminsky, kind of went away in the NBA a little bit, but, he was a dominant big man. He was one of those big men that could, post you up in the paint, and he could also shoot a 3. So the fact that he was a threat both ways, his Wisconsin team was really good. Again, gave us a great performance in the finals that was ultimately just decided by athleticism and a man named Grayson Allen. If it wasn't for Grayson Allen, that Wisconsin team would have won a title.
I would agree. As for me, my number 1, you spoke to it when you're talking all-time great college basketball players. Your number 1 has to be a winner, guy who won a national championship. And I go way back to my childhood. And I know, shout out to our agent, Mike DeGangi, the guy who set this all up. I know this is one of his all-time favorite Tar Heels. But Tyler Hansbrough, that is the greatest college basketball player I ever watched. I've never seen an intensity, unmatched athleticism, and just grit out of a player. I have that image stuck in my head of him with the bloody face, just going after the ball. Nobody rebounded like him. He was a double-double machine, wins a national championship with North Carolina and Ty Lawson. That time of watching college basketball, the Duke rivalry then with Kyle Singler and John Shire, the Plumlee brothers, that was just incredible basketball to watch. And Tyler Hansbrough just sticks out in my head as the number 1 basketball player during that time. I remember buying his Indiana Pacers jersey right when he got drafted. He ended up being a terrible NBA player, but
terrible.
College-wise, there was nobody that had that. That's what I love about college basketball. You get players who have grit and toughness like nobody else. And especially, this is the one thing I think we can agree on. What's changed about college basketball is you don't have as many 4-year seniors anymore. And those are the guys that make such an impact in college basketball. They play for one team 4 years and give everything they have to that school. And, we're going to touch on it at the end of our show and how a lot of these players in the tournament this year are just missing out on their senior years. And it's really sad to see. But to wrap up Odd Man Out, my odd man out is another senior who played 4 years at Villanova, Jalen Brunson. I had to pick somebody on those Villanova teams, and Brunson's the guy who was on both of them. Won 2 national championships in 4 years. That's incredible. The most outstanding player in college basketball, 2017-18, and just really led that team. He would have been the tournament's most outstanding player if it wasn't for Dante DiVincenzo. His second year, Brunson, he's actually turned into a really good NBA player too, which is cool to see, but just a 2-time national championship winner in 4 years is incredible. They were even a 1 seed in that year in between. It's really, really he had such a great career. And as a Villanova fan, it was incredible to watch. But yeah, that wraps up the Odd Man Out segment.
All right. We are going to finish this extremely long episode with Mark and Graham of the day. I'll make mine quick. We wanted to do a senior spotlight for, those seniors who really couldn't finish their career the way they wanted to. I'll go first. Probably statistically, the best college athlete or best college basketball player ever, and that's women's senior for Oregon, Sabrina Ionescu. She's the only player in Division I history with 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, and 1,000 assists. She was a part of Mamba Academy, her mentor being Kobe Bryant, and she's dirty. And she took her team to the Final Four last year, and the only reason why she stayed is because she said, and I quote, "I want to win a national title my senior year." And now she can't do that, and it's very sad. So Sabrina Ionescu is my Graham of the day. Let's hear the Mark of the day.
I'm going to go with another senior on the men's side. He's a guy a lot of Jersey kids, especially that I go to school with, he has a special place in their heart. But Miles Powell from Trenton, Seton Hall's star. Seton Hall was having a phenomenal year, led by him. He was great last year and they lost in the tournament. And he said, "I'm coming back for my senior year and let's make a run." They were going to be a 3 seed, I believe. Seton Hall had a serious chance to make a run, and it was going to be led by Miles Powell, the senior. He had to say a tough goodbye to his school. Doesn't look like these seniors are going to be eligible again. And I'm interested to see what happens in the draft, if he gets drafted, where he goes, and how his NBA career turns out. But just a 21-point scorer this year. He was phenomenal for Seton Hall and led them to just a great season. I would have loved to see how it played out. But it's really it's a tough break for all these seniors this year.
Yeah, just thinking about how everything's been, just be fortunate and be grateful that everyone's okay. Again, great episode of Mark and Graham podcast. We will be producing content weekly because we are back. Thank you, Quarantine Life. Follow us on Instagram at Mark and Graham _podcast. Follow us on Twitter. We will have highlights up after this episode. I'm Logan. That's Mark. Great episode, everyone.
All right, we'll see you.